Okay, so the P in prove is for prayer. What is the R for?
Read.
Read. What was O?
Observe deeply.
Observe. And so we had 2 letters to go, and we'll introduce both of those tonight. But we spent our whole time in class reading and observing chapter 1, and then you did or checked your observation again at home, and that'll make up a part of every week. Every time you start a new chapter, you'll start with reading and with observation. So that's just our review of what we do. And when we do the reading, the difference between reading the way we're training ourselves to read is that the key is that we're reading for meaning. That's why we ask those questions. We're actually trying to grab the meaning while you're reading. What does it say? And that's why we use our 5 questions that we'll talk about as we go through tonight. And then when we do that observation, we want to make sure that we're opening our eyes and our hearts and our minds to that understanding and to that meaning. And so those tools that we use really are just designed for you to work with them and be able to find a method that works for you, that draws your heart. So it's my prayer that it draws you in, and that you want to be in the Bible. So you guys completed days 1 and day 2 of the precept homework on your own. And then we're going to do some review. So for a reminder for everybody, because we haven't been in a book for a while, and so we've just kind of, steadfastly marched through our instructions and how we observe. Now that we're back in homework, one of the things you need to remember, and if you're new, you may not know this, is that after you've done the homework and we come back to discuss it, we don't go through the book question by question. What we do is we go through the chapter. So tonight, after you guys do review, our beginning focus is going to be verses 1 through 3, which means we're going to jump around in the homework. And I'll direct you, because you will need to have it most of the time. Sometimes you don't even need to have the homework out. You did it, so you have understanding. And then we discuss and have application. But if for tonight, for example, when we use some cross references, you'll need to see that on those pages and you'll want to fill that in. And I will do my best to direct you, including page numbers, I hope. So tonight, what I would like you guys to do for review, I need to count you guys up. I'm going to have you work in groups. It's a good time at the beginning of the year to do that. If you've got, I'm going to give you more time than I think you need, because I know some of you will have a new face or two. Make sure you kind of do quick introductions. It looks like maybe just Melissa might be the only one since Jennifer's not on, but make sure you, whoever has Melissa in your group, say hi, and you can all say hi to each other for a couple minutes. I would like you to, I don't have the page number for this one, turn to number 2 on day 1 is all it was. So it's probably page 2, maybe, and maybe page 3. Let's see.
Page 2.
Yes, thank you. And so I'm going to, I'm not going to assign you those segments that, well, yes, I will. I'll assign you each a segment to do on your own. And then you may have time to see what the other ones say as well. So let me see how many groups I wanted. I think we can do 5. We can do all 5 groups tonight. There's 5 sections. And so that's what we'll do. So after I see who's who, then I'll assign a segment, letter A, B, C, D, or E to your group. So let me get those started. And actually, this part, we don't need to have the video on. If you're at home watching and you're on your own doing this, what we're doing is doing review for chapter 1 by making sure that we got what the segment themes are. That's what that is. So if you are watching and you don't have the book, what you want to do is see if you can check what every segment, for instance, verses 1 through 3 or 1 through 7 or whatever they are, you want to see what they were about. And we talked about that briefly last week. So I'm going to pause the video while we set all this up. Okay, so group 1, if you would tell us what you think the theme would be for verses 1 through 3.
Well, I had the word of the Lord came to Ezekiel. He's a priest and son of Buzi, While he was in the land of the Chaldeans by the river Chabar, Ezekiel saw a vision, and while he was among the exiles.
Okay, that's a lot for verses 1 through 3. It's fine. Again, these are all personal. If we wanted to take that down, where's any of my people that are very brief, that's fine. She got really good detail. If you wanted it to be short, I just want an example so that people see that that's okay too. What would a shorter theme be, Pat?
What about visions from God expressly to Ezekiel?
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. Passive there, passive tense. Anybody else want to share one?
I just said the word of the Lord comes to Ezekiel.
Okay, Melissa?
I said the word of the Lord came to Ezekiel, and he saw visions of God while in exile in the land of the Chaldeans.
Okay, again, a lot more detail, but
Mhm.
it's fine as long as you have either visions or word of the Lord or both of those coming to Ezekiel. That at a minimum covers that. Okay, and then you'll be set up for what comes next. So speaking of what comes next, the person I know that's in that group is Mary, but I know she might not be the one talking. So whoever's talking, can go ahead. Verses 4 to 14.
We had Ezekiel's vision of the 4 living beings within the storm wind from the north.
Okay. Again, even that's a little bit of extra detail from verse 4, but if you really wanted it short, what could your theme be for those?
4 living
Ezekiel's-
beings.
The 4 living beings, right? The detail's fine, but if you want it shorter, it's fine just to have the 4 living beings because obviously that's what it's about. There's no question when you look back at your homework. How about verses 15 to 21? Who's speaking for that group?
I guess I can. We didn't really plan it.
Okay.
I'll just speak and then the rest of my group can chime in over me because I didn't really contribute that much. We have the 4 wheels, and so they move in agreement with the living beings, and it says the wheels knew what the spirit was, where it was about to go, and the spirit in the living things was also in the wheels.
Okay. Again, a lot of detail. How could you shorten it if you wanted to? Anybody else?
The wheels of the living beings.
Okay, that's the really brief one. And then you know you're going to look and find the detail. Yep, perfect. And again, we're not saying longer is wrong, just giving you options so that you know in the future. And just in case we haven't talked about it, you can put them in the homework, but also that's what I do. You can't read it, see it probably, but this is what I do on the side of my margins there in that wide margin. And when one is obvious to me, I just go ahead and write it on there. Then I know where it is later. Like this time there were some pretty simple ones. They're not always that easy, but those 2 segments were pretty easy. Okay, verses what, 22 to 25?
Oh, that's us.
Yeah.
Okay. In this one, the theme was talking about the expanse over the living beings and
Okay.
how their wings made sounds like the voice of the Almighty.
Okay, good. So again, even if you just have the expanse above the 4 living beings, possibly even the expanse if you're really a really brief writer, as long as you have that, then you know what that segment was about. And the last group, verses 26 to 28.
A throne with God on it.
Okay. Oh, that word up. That's good. That's a good place. I know we have some probably different thoughts about who's on the throne. And I don't know if we'll get to that tonight to see, but we'll definitely cover that at some point. Okay, so we're just going to start then. Again, as I explained, what we do now is you're just going to want your observation worksheet out for chapter 1, because we're going to dive in a little bit more. We're going to start the verify phase. So those of you who don't know, letter V in prove it stands for verify. And what we're doing is we're verifying, clarifying, correcting our understanding. So this is where we've looked at it, we know what it says, and now in the verify stage, we want to know what it means as much as we can. We want to use some tools to look to see what it means. And so your homework will help you with those tools, and then you'll know where to go to find them. So the other thing you're going to need for this stage is you'll need your map. It was on page 229 from the appendix. You've probably, if you were with us last week, you've probably pulled it out and have it with your lesson 1 homework anyway. And at this point, we need the map, and we need someone to read verses 1 to 3 for us, and we'll see what there is that we need to know a little bit more about. So I have Cheryl up first. Are you okay to read, Cheryl? Okay.
Yes.
So verses 1 to 3 of Ezekiel chapter 1.
Okay. Now it came about in the 30th year, on the 5th day of the 4th month, while I was by the river Kibar among the exiles, the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God. On the 5th of the month, in the 5th year of King Jehoiakim's exile, the word of the Lord came expressly to Ezekiel, the priest, son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans by the river Kibar. And there the hand of the Lord came upon him.
Okay, so we see a couple things that we marked and that we haven't talked about yet. So we want to try to understand a couple things about the geographical locations we've been given and about the time frames that we've been given, because it looks a little interesting. There's actually, 3 different things there that we want to consider. But first of all, if you've got that map, I always mark on my map. I'm going to share the screens with you as we find it, in case you struggled to find it. So this is the first one. It's got the scripture with it. This is just an abbreviated version of what you all have. It's mostly there. The part we need is there. So can somebody sort of direct us to where we would find the land of the Chaldeans and or the river Kibar? Anybody, is anybody good at giving directions?
Well, it's if you can see Babylon, which is,
Yeah, she's got it right there, which is another interesting thing to know. So this map is super helpful to let you know that that land is what is also called Babylon in scripture. Okay, how about the river? Where do we go to find that?
To the right of it.
Yep, just over there to the right. And they don't always have them all showing, but this one does. So we know exactly where Ezekiel is. And we'll talk about it more in a minute, but we're going to talk about why is he there, because where might we expect to find a prophet of the Lord?
Over there, yeah.
Here in Israel or in Judah, right? But he's not here, he's over here, which will help us with that historical context that we talk about. Okay, so we're going to go, I think, to some questions that I'm not sure that you all even had yet. So we want to find out, right? This is what verify means, is we see what it says, but now I want to verify, well, what does that mean? Like, do I have some questions? Well, what does this time frame mean? Why is he there? Can I find that information out? And most of the time you can. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes there are things that God just didn't want us to know, but we're going to look. So before we look at cross references, go ahead and look at verse 1 again and tell me if right in the reading, in the context, is there anything that would help you answer the question, why is Ezekiel where he is?
Yes,
What is
because
it, Pat?
it said he is with the exiles.
Exiles.
Okay, perfect. He's with the exiles. So we would know then that he's not in Israel and it's for a reason. Even if you didn't already know Israel's history, you'd be able to put that into a context. So we can see it in the context, but we can also look at some historical books of the Bible that cover this topic. And so that tool under verify is cross references. Those of you who've been doing these studies for a while know that after the observation, you're going to spend a fairly large amount of your time looking at cross references. But that is a great help, not just because you get this information, but also you, especially if you're new to the word, you learn your Bible because you're going everywhere back and forth from Genesis to Revelation to learn these things about the text. Okay, so what I need you to do is we are going to go to number 6 on, number 2 on page 6, which is something that would be in your homework to go forward. So you haven't done this part yet, and this is where I wanted to help you understand that we don't always talk in homework order. We talk in order of the scripture. So since we're in verses 1 through 3, we want to cover this. So we're going to do this part together tonight. So I just need, I have Fran up next. If you would just read the instructions, Fran, on number 2, page 6.
If Ezekiel was a priest, what was he doing in the land of the Chaldeans? Babylon. Did you see the reference to Jehoshaphat's exile?
So yes, we did see that. But
yes,
okay.
we did.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
letter
we
A.
did see that. Read 2 Kings 23, 28 through 25, 12, and follow the events on the rulers and prophets of Ezekiel in the appendix. List the main events about Jehoshaphat's exile.
Okay, you might be thinking right now, that looks like a lot of reading, and it is a lot of reading. So we're going to walk through one of the ways you can help yourself when they give you a massive cross-reference like this. So one of the other things, go ahead and grab that chart, which was page 223. But again, if you were with us last week, you probably took that out of the appendix, and you should have it with your chapter 1, your lesson 1 homework. If not, go ahead and find it. We're going to do a couple things. I'm going to show you a good way to break down these long passages so you can keep track of what you're looking for, and also how to track it on the chart that they've given you. So we're going to do with this longer passage, what we are doing in Ezekiel is read it in segments. And that's what I do when I'm doing that home. In fact, sometimes I'll have it up on computer screen and highlight it or underline it. Sometimes I'll print it if it's really long and I know I'm going to be in it for a while, so that I can treat it just like I would my other homework. But we'll walk through that tonight. So the other thing while you're all grabbing stuff is you need that timeline. You'll want to have this page open because as we find this information, you'll want to put it in the answer, and then you'll have that done. And you're also going to need a Bible or a phone or something to read along the scripture with us from 2 Kings. So while you're all getting 2 Kings 23, the first segment we're going to read is 23 verses 28 to 36. We're only going to go that far. And I have Mary in front of me, and in just a second, I'll have Mary read. But note what letter A said. Or actually it's under number 2, just at the top. No, it's under A. List the main events about Jehoiakim's exile. So you don't want to rewrite almost 3 full chapters of 2 Kings, right? You're just looking for the main points of this one king. So in some segments, we're not even going to see him, but we'll talk about, even if we don't see him, is there anything we just want to know and what can we put on our timeline? Okay, so we're going to be doing all of that, and I'll guide you through where you want to make sure you get something written down in your answer. Okay, so is everybody ready? Has everybody got 2 Kings 23 open? All right,
Mhm.
Mary, can you read 28 to 36 for us? So watch for Jehoiakim and then maybe pay attention to, if we don't see him, why do you suppose we're having to read this much? Like, why did they have us read here? What do we learn? Okay, that's what we'll be watching for. All right, Mary.
Okay, 2 Kings 23, 28, right?
Yep, 28 to 36.
Yeah, 28 to 36. Okay, I had the wrong. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
23. But in the 18th year of King Josiah, this Passover was kept to the Lord in Jerusalem. Moreover, Josiah put away the
I think
mediums.
you're too early. I'm sorry, Mary. Am I off? Is that 28? 23?
Oh, no,
28?
that's 23, 23, 23. Oh,
Yeah,
gee.
okay. Thanks.
Sorry.
That's
Okay, pardon me. Josiah's death in battle. Oh, I'm not supposed to do that either. I'll try the third time's charm. Now the rest of the acts of Josiah and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? In his days, Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, went up to the king of Assyria to the river Euphrates. King Josiah went to meet him, and Pharaoh Necho killed him at Megiddo as soon as he saw him. And his servants carried him dead in a chariot from Megiddo and brought him to Jerusalem and buried him in his own tomb. And the people of the land took Jehoaz, the son of Josiah, and anointed him and made him king in his father's place. Jehoaz was 23 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah, and he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his fathers had done. That's to 32.
All the way to 36, please.
Oops. And Pharaoh Necho put him in bonds at Riblah in the land of Hamath, that he might not reign in Jerusalem, and laid on the land a tribute of 100 talents of silver and a talent of gold. And Pharaoh Necho made Eliakim, the son of Josiah, king in the place of Josiah, his father, and changed his name to Jehoiakim. But he took Jehoahaz away, and he came to Egypt and died there. And Jehoiakim gave the silver and the gold to Pharaoh, but he taxed the land to give the money according to the command of Pharaoh. He exacted the silver and the gold and of the people of the land from everyone according to his assessment to give it to Pharaoh Necho. Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zebedah, the daughter of Pedaiah of Rumah. And he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his fathers had done.
Okay, we're going to look at the timeline in just a minute, but just a question. Did we learn anything about Jehoiakim here in this part?
No.
No, why do you
No.
suppose they brought us back this far? What do you learn about what's happening to or going on with the people of Judah from this passage?
Verse 37.
Yes.
The people are doing evil. Then 32, it said the
Yes.
same thing.
Yes, so
Yeah.
there's
No.
2 kings listed after Josiah, who wasn't, when it says just as his father's done, that always means their ancestors. Josiah was actually a good king, but the previous kings had also been evil. So now if you want to take out your timeline, and we'll keep this out in and out. Again, I'm going to bring up mine and show you some extra markings that you can do on it if you want. It helps a little bit with these time frames.
Okay.
Here's King Josiah, who is dead at the beginning of our passage, but you can see that date, right? 609. And then you can see Jehoaz he's right here. He doesn't even fit. He's in between here and here. And then Jehoiakim starts right here. All of that happens in the year 609 BC. And so I do this when I'm not on the computer as well. I just put an arrow, or even I'll write it up here. This was this passage that we had. So in 2 Kings 23, 28 to 36, we were discussing 609 BC. If this was also in the exact passage I was studying, I would put that date right in my observation worksheet, but we don't have that date yet. So does everybody see that on your own handout, where to kind of look to see that? And you can see up here under King of Egypt that here's Necho, who was causing the problem for them. So it's a really nice timeline that Precept does when they line all that stuff up together for us. Okay, any questions about that segment? You don't have anything you need to write in your answer yet, because that's just a list of main events for a guy we haven't seen yet. Okay, is everybody good with this timeline?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do stop share. And our next passage is 2 Kings 24, verses 1 to 5. And I'm going to ask Dee Dee to read that. So just do the same thing. Look for Jehoiakim, or Jehoiakim, however we say his name. I listened to pronunciation for several things today, but not that one. And then also, again, did we learn anything that we'd want to know? All right, Dee Dee's going to read 24, 1 to 5.
In his days, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up, and Jehoiakim became his servant for 3 years. Then he turned and rebelled against him. The Lord sent against him bands of Chaldeans, bands of Armenians, bands of Moabites, bands of Ammonites. So he sent them against Judah to destroy it, according to the word of the Lord, which he spoke through his servants, the prophets. Surely at the command of the Lord, it came upon Judah to remove them from his sight because of the sins of Manasseh, according to all that he had done, and also for the innocent blood which he has shed. For he filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, and the Lord would not forgive. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoiakim and all that he did, are they not written in the books of Chronicles of the kings of Judah?
Okay, so do we see Jehoiakim here yet?
No.
Nope. So what would you take away here? In fact, what you might do is, do you see anything between our last segment and this segment that might be cause and effect? We see that these things are happening to Judah for a very particular reason, according to this passage. What's the reason that they're actually suffering from these other invaders, according to this passage?
The word of the Lord. Yeah.
Yeah. The
That
sins
word of
of
the Lord.
Manasseh.
Mhm.
I don't know how you'd say that.
Manasseh?
Because one of the kings had shed innocent blood in Judah.
Right. And
And the
also
Lord
we
wouldn't
just
forgive.
looked at a passage that the 2 kings after Josiah also continued to do evil. All of you who've been with us for a while, we've been in this passage before in one of our studies. We have watched time and time again that God has said, if you follow me and obey, you'll be blessed. If you don't, you'll be cursed, you'll be taken captive, I'll destroy you. He's told them. And so now he says, according to the word that he spoke through the prophets, which we're reading lots of prophets, then this is what's going to happen. And so we have the why, but there's still nothing there about our time frame, but let's see if there's something we need to mark on the time frame. Okay, yeah, it's the time frame doesn't change, but you can add that this same event happened in 2 Kings 24, 1-5. So I just added that to my arrow because we're still talking about this king. So I just added that scripture passage. And this can be really helpful because then you'll automatically know where to go back and look for it if you feel like you need information. A lot of these things are also in 2nd Chronicles and some of it in Jeremiah. Okay, so we've got a couple segments down. Let's go ahead and move on.
Chris, excuse me, Chris, where did you get that from the chapter 24? Ezekiel.
It's number 2A on page 6 of your homework.
I don't see a 20.
That's because it's in that big gap. It's 2 Kings 23, 28, all the way to 25.
Oh, all the way to chapter 25.
Yeah, we're
Okay,
just in the middle. Yeah, they wanted you to read all of it. So that's what we're going to do.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Okay, who's next? Pat is going to read or can you read if you got it in front of you?
No, I'm struggling trying to get it on my phone now. I don't have it.
Okay, Melissa, can you read 2 Kings 24, just verses 6-8? Okay.
Yes. So Jehoiakim slept with his fathers, and Jehoiachin, his son, became king in his place. The king of Egypt did not come out of his land again, for the king of Babylon had taken all that belonged to the king of Egypt, from the brook of Egypt to the river Euphrates. Jehoiachin was 18 years old when he became king, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Nehushta, the daughter of Elnathan of Jerusalem. He did evil in the sight of the Lord according to all that his father had done.
Okay, so do we get some things we want to write down as an answer for number 2A? Yeah. So what would be the first thing that you could list here?
18 when he became king.
Yeah, you can combine a few things. He becomes king when he's 18. You can list his father if you want. That's up to you. What else do we know?
He was only in Jerusalem for 3 months, so something happens.
Yeah, okay, so it says he reigned in Jerusalem for 3 months. It doesn't say he dies or he stops reigning. It just says in Jerusalem for 3 months. Good point. So that's really all you need to list, except we're going to go do one more thing, and we're going to go to that timeline so that we actually can put down the year that this happens. So if you look at that again, you will see it now. He's right there after the other ones. He's right here again, because it's 3 months. He has 2 other names too. He fits right in here. So it's still this year. What's the year we're talking about?
$597.
597. And again, yeah, I'll look at all that happened in that 1 year, but he goes right there. And so down below, I went ahead and listed which part of the scripture I got that from. Okay. All right, we're going to move forward with the next segment in chapter 24. Evelyn, can you read chapter 24, verses 10-17?
Okay. At that time, the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, went up to Jerusalem, and the city came under siege. And Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, came to the city while his servants were besieging it. Jehoiakim, king of Judah, went out to the king of Babylon, he and his mother and his servants and his captains and his officials. So the king of Babylon took him captive in the 8th year of his reign. He carried out from there all the treasures of the house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's house, and cut in pieces all the vessels of gold which Solomon, king of Israel, had made in the temple of the Lord, just as the Lord had said. Then he led away into exile all Jerusalem and all the captains and all the mighty men of valor, 10,000 captives, and all the craftsmen and the smiths. None remained except the poorest people of the land. So he led Jehoiakim away into the exile to Babylon, also the king's mother and the king's wives and his officials and the leading men of the land. He led away into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. All the men of valor, 7,000, and the craftsmen and the smiths, 1,000, all strong and fit for war. And these the king of Babylon brought into the exile to Babylon. Then the king of Babylon made his uncle Mattaniah king in his place and changed his name to Zedekiah.
Okay, so let's look back through so you can add to your list any of the information that just relates directly to King Jehoiakim. The first place is verse 12. What do you learn there?
He was taken captive by
Okay,
Babylon.
Before being taken captive, and I noticed your version didn't say exactly what mine does. Does anybody have something specific there?
Jehoiakim surrendered.
He surrenders. He gave himself up. So he and his mother servants, they surrender to the king of Babylon. They don't continue to fight, or I don't know if they even were. Okay, then what else happens? Somebody's already said it.
His uncle was named king.
Yeah, before that, so in between those two.
He was taken captive to Babylon.
Yeah, taken captive into Babylon. You can list the other information if you want, that's also when it took the 10,000. You'll see that on your timeline. So this already answers the question that we had, that something must have happened because it told us he only reigned in Jerusalem for 3 months. So while I'm getting the map up, you guys can go ahead and get that added to your notes for under number 2A there. Continue what you know about him. And then this is what we would see. I just added verses 10 to 17 under the same arrow because, again, it was only these 3 months. But here under 597, you can see it says Jehoiakim, Ezekiel, and the 10,000 go into captivity. And you see that also falls under the 3 stages of captivity. So Daniel and his friends were already taken in 605. Now you have this huge number of the people of Jerusalem taken captive, including Ezekiel and including King Jehoiakim. Now, this is what's going to help us set verses 1 through 3 in the time context. Okay, did everybody find what they need to for that on your own charts? And get your list. I think we have maybe one more segment, maybe 2 even. Oh, we have a couple. This was really long. Okay, so we're going to move into 2 Kings 24, 18 to 20. Deanna, can you read?
Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 11 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. He did evil in the sight of the Lord in accordance with everything that Jehoiakim had done. For it was due to the anger of the Lord that this happened in Jerusalem and Judah until he cast them out of his presence, and Zedekiah revolted against the king of Babylon.
Okay, more context. Is there anything specific about Jehoiakim? Nope, we just continue to see the why that this is happening. So let's just go ahead and move into 2 Kings 25, 1 to 7. And then we'll have one more passage after that. Teresa, are you okay to read?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, so everybody, we're in 2 Kings 25 now, verses 1 to 7.
Now in the 9th year of his reign, on the 10th day of the 10th month, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came, he and all his army, against Jerusalem, camped against it, and built a siege wall all around it. So the city was under siege until the 11th year of King Zedekiah. On the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine was so severe in the city that there was no food for the people of the land. Then the city was broken into, and all the men of war fled by night by way of the gate between the two walls beside the king's garden, through the Chaldeans, though the Chaldeans were all around the city, and they went by the way of the Arabah. But the army of the Chaldeans pursued the king and overtook him in the plains of Jericho, and all his army was scattered with him. Then they captured the king and brought him to the king of Babylon at Riblah, and he passed sentence on him. They slaughtered the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, then put out the eyes of Zedekiah and bound him with bronze fetters and brought him to Babylon.
Okay, so we start to see some of the details of this, what happens to Jerusalem. And so even though our king isn't mentioned, this is part of a major event for Jerusalem. The final part of it's in the next section, but what will we put here? It's way back in verse 1. What has happened to Jerusalem in this segment?
They're being attacked by Babylon.
Yep, they're being attacked. And the word that we probably really want to use is siege, because that's that thing where they've been tied in. So you would find that word in verse 1, and then you can see the degree eventually to how severe it is. If you want to add notes about Zedekiah, you can, but really we just want to see Jehoiakim and what's happening in Jerusalem. Okay, so let's see, did I mark anything of that? Nope, we're going to finish off with 25, 8 to 12. And Sarah Sanchez, can you read 25, 8 to 12?
Yes.
Okay, this will finish it off.
8 to 12. Now on the 7th day of the 5th month, which was the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, Nebuzaradan, the king of the bodyguards, a servant of the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem, and he burned the house of the Lord, the king's house, all the houses of Jerusalem, even every great house he burned with fire. So all the army of the Chaldeans who were with the captain of the bodyguards tore down the walls around Jerusalem. Then Nebuzaradan, the captain of the bodyguards, led into exile the rest of the people who were left in the city, and the deserters who had deserted the king of Babylon, and the rest of the people. But the captain of the bodyguards left some of the poorest of the land to be vine dressers and farmers.
Okay, so this is that other major event for Jerusalem that you want to go ahead and put in your notes and what has happened at this point.
The temple and the walls are destroyed.
Yep, they burned it down and tore down the walls. So this is that key passage for any of you who've studied Nehemiah or Ezra or all of those books. This is, they're going back to do the rebuilding. This is where it happened. This is the story of why they had to go do that. And if you look at your timeline, they actually named this event and give you the date. So if you want to, you can add that date in your notes if you want. It's 586, the destruction of Jerusalem during this captivity. And that's where we got it, was 2 Kings 25, 1 to 12. So a major event on the Hebrew timeline for them. Okay, any questions about what we just did or what you've got in your notes or anything else that you want to ask about or talk about, or just anything from the text? Again, when you see those really long, lengthy passages, don't panic. Just look for exactly what they want you to find, and just find some. Just break. I really think breaking it into segments is one of the most helpful things that you can do. Okay, so now we have some context that's going to lead us into the next question. If you look at letter B, right underneath where you just filled in all of this information, the question is, why is Ezekiel in Babylon, the land of the Chaldeans? We just found out. Why is he there?
Taken captive.
He was taken captive, and the timeline, it even gives you the date. What's the date that Ezekiel was taken captive?
597.
597 BC. So you want to get something about that reasoning into your answer there under letter B.
I thought for context, 2 Kings 24:20 was a good explanation. It says, "For through the anger of the Lord this came about on Jerusalem and Judah until he cast them out from his presence." So just for more reasoning on why God was doing it.
Yeah, he's been giving that. They just continued not to follow what he had warned them about through the prophets. Okay, some of you probably still looking. Anybody who's done, go ahead and just look at number 3A, because we're just going to continue this part, and then we're going to move on through the chapter. So 3 says, now let's deal with the two different references to time in Ezekiel. So we've taken care of the where. Now we want to look at the when. In Ezekiel 1, verses 1 to 2, we're going to look back at those verses. Letter A says, we'll begin with the easiest. Go ahead again and keep your timeline out, the rulers and prophets of Ezekiel. When is the 5th year of Jehoiakim's exile? Remember, BC years decrease. Also, it's one of those math things where you don't just subtract. You have to remember that it's a year at a time. Does anybody want to try to tell us what year that would be, the 5th year of King's exile? He went into exile in what year?
597.
Right. So remember, so 597 is actually going to be the year 597 to 596, right? So there's 1. Then how do you get down to 5?
592.
592, but also part of
1.
593. 593 to 592. Does everybody see how that works? I can show you if you want to see, because I have to do it this way because my brain doesn't just do this very well. And if I'm off, somebody let me know. But I think this is how we look at it. This is the 1st year. This is the 2nd year, 3rd year, 4th year, 5th year. So sometimes when you are off a year on the math, when you look at a timeline with these in particular for the Bible study, this is usually why I'll find out that, oh, I just subtracted instead of counted it as a year. Okay. So in this time frame, and that's also probably why some of them are off a little bit. You'll find different timelines that have different years. So that's just your answer for part A, is we just wanted to see when is the 5th year. Why do we want to know what the 5th year of his exile is?
Because that's when Ezekiel got had the word of the Lord came till Ezekiel on the 5th month of the 5th year.
So if you go back to verse 2, that's that parenthetical. It gives us more information about what they told us in verse 1. So now if you wanted to the side of number 2, you could put 593 to 592 BC. We'd have to look back at the month. You know, I'm not sure exactly which one of those it is. You can probably figure it out. Somebody probably has it listed somewhere, but it's in that range. and you can list it there if you want. Okay, so as they said, that's sort of well, they think it's the easier question to answer. I don't really think the next part's a hard part to answer, but let's look at letter B. In in verse 3, let's look at that first. It says the word of the Lord came expressly to Ezekiel the priest, son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans by the river Kibar, and there the hand of the Lord came upon him. Where is that number? Okay, and so we want to get some more information about that information. So letter B says, what does the 30th year? That's what I don't see it on. I know it's there. Why am I not seeing it?
It's verse
Verse
1.
1.
Oh, okay, there. Thank you. I knew it was in there. The 30th year, the word of the Lord came expressly to Ezekiel, refer to. Commentaries give several theories. Obviously, God has a point here. So we're going to do our cross references again. And this time we're going to look at Numbers 3, verses 5 through 12. That's really going to set the background. And then we'll look at Numbers 4, verses 1 to 4. According to these verses, at what age did men begin their service in the tent of meeting is what we're looking for. So where am I? Lisa Rector, can you read Numbers 3, verses 5 to 12? Okay.
The
Is
Lord,
everybody-
okay, ready?
Wait, is everybody all right? Everybody good? Okay, looks like it.
The Lord said to Moses, bring the tribe of Levi and present them to Aaron, the priest, to assist him. They are to perform duties for him and for the whole community at the tent of meeting by doing the work of the tabernacle. They are to take care of all the furnishings of the tent of meeting, fulfilling the obligations of the Israelites by doing the work of the tabernacle. Give the Levites to Aaron and his sons. They are the Israelites who are to be given wholly to him. Appoint Aaron and his sons to serve as priests. Anyone else who approaches the sanctuary must be put to death. The Lord also said to Moses, I have taken the Levites from among the Israelites in place of the first male offspring of every Israelite woman. The Levites are mine.
Okay, so we didn't see the time frame we're looking for, but we did learn something about who God called into the priesthood. What do you now know for sure, if you hadn't thought about it yet? What do you know about Ezekiel?
He's a
He's a
Levite.
Levite.
He's a Levite. He calls himself a
Yeah.
priest. So
Mhm.
we know that according to
Mhm.
the word of the Lord, he's a Levite. So we have the
Mhm.
background. Now, if people moved around, Janelle, could you read Numbers 4, verses 1 to 4? And this is where we'll find the answer we're looking for.
Oh. Huh.
Then the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, take a census of the descendants of Kohath from among the sons of Levi by their families, by their fathers' households, from 30 years and upward, even to 50 years old, all who enter the service to do the work in the tent of meeting. This is the work of the descendants of Kohath in the tent of meeting concerning the most holy things.
Okay, so what is it? What is a possibility that this time reference in verse 1 refers to?
Somewhere between age 30 and age 50.
Age 30 and age 50, they can do what?
Serve as priests.
Okay, so we know he's a priest. He calls himself a priest. Oh, sorry, Janelle, gonna have to have you mute again. But what in verse 1, our story starts with, it came about in the
Out in the
30th year.
30th year.
And so our question always is, well, the 30th year of what? Because usually that refers to a king's time reign or something like that. So is there a possibility here of what that time frame might be?
Probably how he was 30 years old.
It's possible that he's 30 years old. That looks like good sense. And when it makes good sense, then you should just take that sense. People do go looking at other places. And if you look this up. You might have found other things. I was happy to take this as a possibility and leave it at that. But anybody have questions? That's all they want to know is what is one possibility that Ezekiel might be saying here.
Chris, in the NIV and the New Living Translation, they both say my 30th year.
Yeah, and who's right? Yeah, perfect. That's a
Ezekiel's
big
30th
help.
year.
Yep. So Ezekiel's 30th year. So again, other translations, especially the ones that try to simplify down, they can be a huge help before you even grab a concordance or a cross reference. They frequently do that. Thanks, Dee Dee. Okay, so that's all you're doing is putting that's a possibility. While we're here and looking, would you please circle number 4 on the top of the next page, because you're going to do that for homework from day 3. That is an application question. It is what I consider, it's my letter E for engage, to engage with the word. I've read it. I know what it says. I've looked at the scriptures. I have a good idea of the understanding of what it means. And now I want to ask God, well, what does it mean to me? What do you want me to do with this? Did I learn something new? Is there a sin I have to correct? Is there something you're confirming in me? That's always good news too. It isn't always hard things. Sometimes we learn, hey, I already got that, and give myself a pat on the back. So please try not to skip the application questions. Try to do some thinking and spend that time with God. So circle number 4, you'll do that at home. You might as well also go back to the beginning of day 3 and circle number 1. That is a summary of chapter 1, and that will help you in review. Okay. So we just did a good chunk of the day 3 homework. So you've got 2 little parts to do. Okay. So now what we're going to do is go back into your day 2 homework that you did, but we're just really going to be looking at continuing our discussion of Ezekiel chapter 1. And so we've done a pretty deep dive into the first 3 verses. In fact, if you think about it, you know who it's about, you know what it's about, you know when it happens, you know where it happens. And with some of the background and what he says here, you even get an idea of why and how this is happening. How did the visions come to him? Why is he going to give him the vision? So that's a lot of information in those first 3 verses. But we're going to go on and we're going to look at this description of, we're not going to get very far, but we're going to look to see verse by verse what we learned about the subject in verses 4 to 14. So who are we going to be talking about? Everybody knows this already.
4 living beings.
The 4 living beings. We all know that because we already talked about the theme. So everybody sees that. So we're just going to take them verse by verse. I am going to show you not my paper drawings, but a way that I did it on computer just to be able to share with you. Just because these are so difficult to visualize that we can see, it really will help us to see, even with just some very simple graphics, how we can understand this. So I am up to, oh, Amy, you've moved around. Can you read just verse 4 for us? Here's what I'd like you to do. If you didn't draw, if you've got a piece of paper handy, try as you're listening to put something on paper. Maybe it's just circles for faces or whatever. If you did draw, have that out so you can see if you caught all the details, and you can kind of work on those while we go. Okay. So Amy's going to read just verse 4. We'll talk about it. I'll show you a graphic. We'll answer questions. We're not going to get very far at all before we have to quit tonight, but that's okay. We're going to take our time with this awesome vision we get here. Okay. So Amy's going to read us verse 4.
Okay. As I looked, behold, a storm wind was coming from the north, a great cloud with fire flashing forth continually, and a bright light around it, and in its midst something like a glowing metal in the midst of the fire.
Okay, so now if you were drawing, the beings aren't listed here yet, so you might not have even tried to draw anything here. That's fine. But by the time you get to verse 5, you're going to see that it relates. Oh, somebody's got a phone call we're getting through.
Wait, Jennifer.
Jennifer,
Can you mute,
I can
mute her?
Let me mute her, yep.
Yeah, thank you. Do you think?
If I can find her.
Oh, actually, if you want the song, if you want to listen to it on your own.
I can't find her.
Hang on.
There we go. Okay, that's what it was. Okay, so let's go ahead. Amy, would you go ahead and read verse 5 as well so that we can see how they even relate to each other?
Yes. Within it, there were figures resembling 4 living beings, and this was their appearance. They had human form.
Okay, so within it, what's that? Within what are the 4 living beings? You have to go back to verse 4.
Storm.
In this storm, and then at the very end of it,
Cloud.
in the middle
the
of it
midst of the
was
fire.
something like glowing metal in the midst of a fire. So I'm sort of picturing this, that from a distance, maybe the vision's coming closer, all he sees, it just looks like glowing metal at first. And again, this is pitiful. You can see how simple you can keep this. Whoops, I just moved away from it. For verse 4, I just did this. Again, this is with just graphics online, right? Here's a storm, here's lightning, here's fire, here's a glowing blob of metal in the middle, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be complicated. And that's just, the computer does all the work if you do it on the computer. Okay, so that's where we are on that. I'm gonna leave you guys like this, and then it won't take me as much time to pop back and forth. Oh, that means I can't see you though. Oh, who can read next? All of you who I see have read. Let me move. Jocelyn, would you read? Oh, we do have to do verse 5, right? So this was basically verse 4. Verse 5, I just put 4 beings because right now, all I know is they had human form. Now I know more than that, but this is just what I did to start. And that's all you have to do if that's what you can do, right? There's 4 human form beings in the blob of metal, right? Okay. Jocelyn, would you read verse 6 for us? Jocelyn?
Yes.
Okay.
Each of them had 4 faces and 4 wings.
Okay, so now you start to go, okay, how am I going to do that? Well, let's see. There's a close-up of the men. All right, this is a simple way. At the beginning, here's 4 faces, right? I put them in this order because I know what scripture is going to tell me later. So I wanted them lined up like this, but it doesn't really matter, right? You can use circles for faces. You're just trying to get your brain wrapped around what you're reading. Does that already kind of make you just go, wow, look at it when I put it on paper, right? I mean, it's pretty amazing. Okay, any questions? Let's see. I can't see anybody new. Oh, I can scroll. Wow, we've got Sarah Chantry. Would you read verse 7?
Their legs were straight and their feet were like a calf's hoof, and they gleamed like burnished bronze.
Okay, yeah, this one I was not looking forward to. Oops, I went too far. I missed them. I missed that one. My slides are off. Uh-oh.
Well, there was wings in verse 6.
Okay, there. Okay, 4 faces and 4 wings. So you can see I started with wings like this just because it was right there. I eventually changed them, which you could find yourself doing when you're drawing too. Keep it simple at first. In fact, I have a little way that I draw angels all the time for my symbols, but I've got 4 wings, 4 faces. I wanted to keep representing the fact that they're in the middle of fire, so I just put fire on there. And now we've read about the feet. This was not the fun part, but there I've given them calf hooves, which again, if you don't like drawing, it's really easy on the computer. You just go find a picture of calf hooves. Why did I make them this color?
Burnished bronze.
Because it says they gleam like burnished
like
bronze,
bronze.
kind of the closest I could get. You could have done orange, I could have done whatever, but I wanted to show that they're described as that shiny metal. Okay. So they look kind of funny so far. Let me see. Who else? Marla, can you read? Can you read verse 8 for us?
Under their wings on their four sides were human hands, as for the faces and wings of the four of them.
Okay, this was when I thought I was kind of skipping happily along, and then it says their four wings on their four sides. So I knew I had four faces, but up to that point, I thought I had sort of a one-dimensional sided being with just four faces. Does this sound like something different when you read about where the hands are?
Yeah.
Sounds now like maybe they're four-dimensional all the way around. Now, where I tried to track that, I'm not sure. Let's see. Yeah, this was my and also, I wasn't sure, is it four hands or four pairs of hands? So this is what I ended up doing with them, because now I do think that maybe they are four-dimensional and not just one-sided with four faces. So if you rotate these, they kind of give you the option of four. And there's four of them, four-sided. Imagine what it would be like to look at this, to see what he's seeing. Also, has it started yet? It has. What word are we going to see repeated all the time in these descriptions about the four living beings?
Four.
Four.
Besides four, there's another word not related to them that's in every single verse, I think.
Oh.
In its midst, something like glowing metal. They resembled four living beings. The feet were like a calf's foot, and they gleamed like burnished bronze. Why does he say like all the time? We call that a word of comparison, and I mark them. Why is he saying like, do you think?
He wasn't sure what it was really, but it was like what he knew.
Yep.
They're trying to describe it in terms of that he knew. Yeah.
Same thing that you find in John in Revelation, right? He doesn't really have the words for exactly what it looks like. So he's giving us as close as he can get, which also frees you up as not having to worry about being perfect, because we're not really sure exactly what they looked like to Ezekiel. But now I'm starting to see. Now, this is where I'm very curious when I look later to see what artists and people did. I haven't looked yet on Google to see if they considered them four-dimensional. I know something else we have is four-dimensional. So, all right. So would somebody read, maybe this will probably be our last one, maybe. I've got the hands, yeah. Are we verse 9? And Laura, would you go ahead and read verse 9?
Their wings touched one another. Their faces did not turn when they moved. Each went straight forward.
Okay, I think I have that here, but let me look and see what I did with that. Yeah, it's the same picture. This verse is why I put them in this order instead of, well, first of all, we know they're four-dimensional because their wings, each being's wings, all of its wings touch each other. So they have to be in some kind of form that their wings touch. So to me, the only way I could do that was to put them in a thing where they touched all the way around. And what does this mean? What are you picturing? Can somebody explain to us what the second part means? When they moved, they went straight forward and their faces did not turn.
It just, all of it moves at one time forward.
Right. So I don't know if I did arrows for this one.
But
or
you
not.
know what,
I did.
Chris, when it said or something about the wings touching one another, I thought
Uh-huh.
it was the four, I mean, and I couldn't draw it.
It does.
I
It
thought it
says
was,
that later. It does.
oh,
It
okay,
says it both. So in this one, it's
okay,
just each being's wings touch each other. And then later it does say what you're going to refer to as well.
okay, thank you for,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're right. So if you can kind of look at one of these beings, and it would be easier now if you actually had just the one face with the four, well, one face on each of these sides. So that means that when the one face is the one going, it just goes that way and nothing turns. They just go that way. And if they want to change direction, the whole thing doesn't spin around. They just then go this way. And so this face becomes the leader, or this face becomes the leader, or this face becomes the leader. Does that make sense? Can you kind of picture that? So they don't ever have to turn because they're four-sided. Okay, let's see. All right, well, let's go ahead and do verse 10 and then we'll call it for tonight. Who do I need? Are you caught up with us, Pat? Can you read verse 10?
Yes. As for the form of their faces, each had the face of a man. All four had the face of a lion on the right and the face of a bull on the left. And all four had the face of an eagle.
Okay, so yes, I did not try to draw these on the computer, and I don't think I'm going to try to draw them. That's my new wings thing. And there's the directions we were talking about. Okay, so this is one way that I started by just representing these, right? So now I have one face, but it says man facing forward, eagle on the back because it's opposite the man, and lion and bull. Now, my main question to myself, and I never know, is who's right are they talking about? So I just did it this way. I don't know, did everybody else do it the other way? I'm usually wrong about right and left like that. So I just did it this way. And then that's what the arrows represent, is that when they're going this way, it would be that the eagle face is going straight, right? If they're going this way, it would be the face of the man that you would see coming at you. And if they wanted to go this way, it would be the face of the bull that you would see. And if they're going this way, it would be the face of the lion. It's just so amazing, isn't it? Like you can't even, and it just gets more and more. Okay. So if you guys want to just mark that, I've marked it, that we're going to start again with verse 11 next week. Let me go ahead and keep you moving forward with the homework. All I need you to do for next week, since we're moving so slowly, is go ahead and complete day 3's homework. Just those couple things I had you circle. Or if you need to fill in the information that we did together a little bit more thoroughly. So you've got that. And now that we've started to talk about this, go ahead and have another look at your drawings. Or if you've decided, hey, I'd rather try it on the computer, go ahead and do that. Or if you didn't try anything, this is your time to start to go, oh, wait a minute, there's no way possible for me, because I'm very visual, that I could actually even attempt to see what they look like if I didn't do this. So I would have to do it even if the homework didn't tell me to do it, because it's just too much for me to try to picture. So just that's all you have to do is just number 1 and I think number 4 on day 3, and then keep up with a good review on where we've been. Okay. Again, we're moving really slowly at first. It won't always be quite this slowly, but I do not want to rush through this description of heaven. It's really what we're looking at, right? Is the throne of heaven. So I don't want to rush through it. Any questions? That was a great question. Okay, I'm going to end the video. Hope you all at home are trying drawing, and just keep checking in on those videos on how to find your own way to do it. And I'm sure that you're all much more capable, especially graphically, than I am. So have a good time.